The non-biblical book that I'm reading from this morning is called The Road to Peace by Henry Nouwen. It's actually a compilation of a number of Henry Nouwen's works after his death. He worked for peace diligently for many, many years throughout his life. And so let me read this piece. What we are called to is a life of peacemaking, in which all that we do, say, think, or dream is part of our concern to bring peace to this world. None of us is excused. How would the world look if all Christians in Australia, Asia, Europe, Africa, North and South America were to commit themselves without reservation to peace? How would the world look if all Christians, young, middle-aged, or old, were to say loudly and clearly in words and deeds, "We are for peace"? And how would the world look if all Christians, Protestants, Catholic, Orthodox, were to witness together for him who is the Prince of Peace, Jesus? What would such a consensus in conscience bring about? Would we still spend billions of dollars every month to build ingenious instruments of death while millions of people are starving? Would we still live with the constant fear of impending Holocaust? Would we still hear about parents who question whether it is responsible to bring children into this world, and about children who wonder if they will see the turn of the century? That was probably written 20 to 30 years ago, and yet still so very, very relevant.
This morning's scripture lesson is from the book of Isaiah, chapter 2, verses 1 through 5. This is what Isaiah ben Amos saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem. In the last days, the mountain of Yahweh's temple will be established as the most important mountain and raised above all other hills. All nations will stream toward it. Many people will come and say, "Come, let us climb Yahweh's mountain, to the temple of the God of Jacob, that we may be instructed in God's ways and walk in God's paths." Instruction will be given from Zion, and the word of Yahweh from Jerusalem. God will judge between the nations and render decisions for many countries. They will beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. One nation will not raise the sword against another, and never again will they train for war. O house of Leah and Rachel and Jacob, come, let us walk in the light of Yahweh.
Would you pray with me? Ancient One, peace has been sought after forever. Peace that must begin within each one of us. And so we ask that you help us to touch that peace that resides deep within us, that we allow it to fill us, comfort us, soothe us, and act out of that peace. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of each of our hearts be filled with your light and your wisdom. Amen. So here at the beginning of Advent, every year we find ourselves listening to the prophets of old, because they set the stage for why a new voice was needed, why we needed a child of light and hope and peace and joy. And those prophets have had something in common, not only those ancient biblical prophets, but really prophets throughout the ages have held a few things in common. None of them, I'm pretty sure, has been politically correct. Because by and large, they have all been standing against the powers that be to say we need to stop oppression, and we need to stop war, and we need to stop violence, and we need to stop inequality in whatever way, shape, or form that's happened. Oftentimes the biblical prophets, like Isaiah, come down pretty hard on the people who are having a rough time. remember this is back in the day where, you know, everything was cause and effect. So, and it all had to do with God. So if you were blessed, it was because God loved you. And if something was going wrong, it was because clearly you screwed up and God's angry with you. So oftentimes those ancient prophets are preaching doom and gloom because people have gone astray. They've stopped doing what was right in God's eyes. But one of the other things that all of the prophets have in common is that even amidst their doom and gloom and destruction, there's always a word of hope in the midst of it. So let me tell you just a little bit about Isaiah, just to give you your biblical, theological history lesson for today, okay? So the book of Isaiah was a prophet. The book of Isaiah is 66 chapters long. It's often attributed just to Isaiah, whose name symbolically means Yahweh is deliverance. But those 66 chapters were written by many different authors over a 200-year span. It starts, and the book is broken up into 3 sections. So first Isaiah, the first bunch of chapters, is the voice of Isaiah of Jerusalem, who is preaching in about the 8th century BCE, and is seeing Assyria conquering the lands of Israel and taking the best citizens away into exile. And so that first Isaiah is really Isaiah forewarning the people and coming down kind of hard. You know, you all messed up. You all strayed from God. You're all not doing what God wanted you to do. And so God is punishing you and refining you through this conquering of Assyria. It's the way he looked at it. I'm not saying that's true. I'm saying that was Isaiah's understanding. Okay? So, second Isaiah is addressed to the Israelites who are now finding themselves in exile in Babylon. And third Isaiah, which is the end, the last bunch of chapters in Isaiah, is once the exile is over and people have returned to Jerusalem and they're trying to rebuild. So in this part today, we're in the very early part of Isaiah. And the first chapter was all of that, you know, sort of condemnation about Israel. But now we're in chapter 2. And Isaiah is saying, you know, even despite all of that, you're going to come out okay. And one day Jerusalem will once again be a place where people come to learn about God. And where God will judge the nations, and where the nations will turn their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. That dream, that wish, that hope, that prayer for peace someday, even while they're in the midst of war. So here's a thought. As Isaiah was preaching about turning spears into plowshares or swords into plowshares and spears into pruning hooks, I'm not sure that the powers that be would have appreciated that very much back in the day. And I'm also not sure that if that same thing were preached today, that it would be any more welcomed by any of the powers that be today. You can all disagree with me because that's your prerogative, and I always give you the ability to disagree with me. But it feels to me as if being a person who says, I stand firmly for peace, is politically not correct these days. It feels like it's okay to talk about freedom. Oh, freedom, we want freedom. Freedom is great. But to talk about peace and nonviolence is not acceptable. It's taken as a sign of disloyalty. And so I struggle with all of it. Maybe you see it differently. That's how I personally feel. And a little bit of what Henry Nouwen was trying to say. Why is it that, did you know in 2015, this is the latest stat I could find, there were 2.4 billion Christians in the world, which is like a third of the world's population. Jesus was all about peace and nonviolence. Why do we not have a third of the world standing for peace and nonviolence? And what would happen if we could have that? I'm one of those people Henry Nouwen talks about who now thinks, was it a good idea to bring kids into the world? Because what's going to happen? And do I really want my children to bring children into the world? Because is there going to be a world for them? Because it's violence against our world, our earth, as much as it is violence against one another. You know, I can remember on the 1-year anniversary of 9/11, when my daughter Bryn was 3. And I can vividly remember tucking her in that night and giving her a hug and giving her a kiss and praying from the depths of my being that this world could figure out how to live in peace. And in that moment, it occurred to me that there were mothers and fathers all over the world, of every color, of every race, of every creed, of every religion, praying the same thing as they tucked their children in. How do we get to a place where we can be about peace and nonviolence from the core of our souls? G.K. Chesterton wrote an essay on the Magi, you know, the wise men, which it never says anywhere in Scripture, by the way. And in this modern day story of the 3 wise men, he has the 3 of them approaching a new Jerusalem, a Jerusalem of peace. And they're bringing their 3 gifts as an offering, as a passport to entrance into this Jerusalem of peace. And the first one carries cold gold, which can be used to buy affluence and wealth, and buy whatever is needed to make sure peace happens. And the second one doesn't bring the scent of frankincense, but brings the scent of modern chemistry. Chemistry which can plant new fancy seeds. Chemistry which can control population. Chemistry which can do all kinds of interesting things. And the third one brought myrrh in the form of a split atom, a symbol of death for any enemies of peace. And so they got to the gates, and St. Joseph was there and refused to let them in. And they didn't understand why. They said, well, but we've got everything we could ever need to ensure peace. We have the ability to have affluence and the ability to control our environment and the ability to wipe out our enemies. And St. Joseph walked up to each one of them individually and whispered something in their ear. And they all went away sad. He had told them that they'd forgotten the child. They forgot the child that came with peace in his heart and his soul. They forgot the child who showed us the truth of what peace means. And not just that child, they forgot every child, anywhere, everywhere. We forget the children who sit here and say, this is about feeling happy. Forgot the child who, at some point, just before his death, said, my peace I leave you. My peace I give to you. And I don't give as the world gives. Because that peace was in the core of his being. It was like he tried to bequeath it to them because they weren't getting it. And in bequeathing it, maybe they would look within to find it again. Okay, so how do we get there? So this is what I think is missing. Which I've said over and over and over again. It's that we've forgotten that we're all one. Spiritually and energetically, if you pay any attention to quantum physics, we're all one. We are all connected. And it doesn't matter our abilities or our color or our sex or our anything else. And we forget that. There are some equalizers. Things that kind of bring us all down to a level playing field. Can you think of what some of them are? Suddenly none of those differences make any difference.
The need for food.
Hmm?
The need for food.
The need for food. It's a common denominator. Common equalizer. What else? Shelter, safety, water.
Need for love.
The need for love. The need for care. How about the beginning and ending of life? Birth and death are great equalizers. Our health is a great equalizer. As we get older or as things happen. There are times when large amounts of people gather and we forget our differences. And there's an energy in those places where you think, you know, it doesn't matter what any of our differences are because we're at this greater energetic place. Can you think of a crowd you've been in where it's transcended that?
Sacred journeys.
Hmm?
Sacred journeys.
Sacred journeys. God bless you, Mike. I can always count on you. Hopefully many more places of worship around the world are places where we feel a connection with others. On a one-on-one basis, maybe some folks you might have disagreements with. But collectively, we feel like there's an energy that goes beyond that. Where else? The walk. If anybody's ever marched on Washington, get it out of their mouth. There is something special that happens at a march for a common cause. Where else? The festival. Sure, Shirley mentioned the Thanksgiving festival, where it didn't matter your economic situation or anything else, people were all there for a Thanksgiving meal. Beth?
If there's a group of people in danger, for example, I was in the back of, I don't know, let's say it was Shopco and there was a tornado warning, we were all back there
Sure.
by the scissors and the needles.
Where everybody's stuck in Shopco for the tornado warning or whatever it was. Absolutely. But any natural disaster anywhere, right? People rise above it and they come together. I can't believe none of you has said a football game.
Well, better.
Or a baseball game, or a basketball game, a sporting event where you're all doing the wave. You know, you are now part of one great big wave, and it doesn't matter your differences, right? A concert. Nolan, you didn't say a concert. You know, where the boundaries become permeable and you're all part of the music. Those moments remind us of our shared common humanity that transcend everything. So let me share you one last story with you. There's a little boy named Shay. And Shay was born with mental and physical disabilities. And Shay and his dad were walking through the park one day, and Shay saw some of his friends playing baseball. And he looked at his dad and he said, do you think I could ask them if they'd let me play? And as any parent might do, kind of took a big breath and thought, oh, you know, those kids probably don't want a kid like Shay playing with them, and this was a real game. But he thought, you know, maybe if they could just let him play, he could feel that acceptance and belonging that moves beyond the disabilities. And so Shay's dad walked up to one of the kids and he said, you know, do you think Shay could play with you? And the kid looked around for a little bit of guidance, and then shrugged his shoulders and said, well, we're down by 6 runs. It's the 8th inning. Sure, he can play. We'll see if we can get him up to bat in the 9th inning. So the bottom of the 8th inning, they scored a few runs back, but they were still down by 3. By this point, Shay has gone over to the bench and he got a team shirt on and he is all smiles. And his dad went and sat in the bleachers with a tear in his eye. And maybe the kids on the field noticed how much it meant to Dad, how much it meant to Shay. The top of the 9th. They let Shay play out in right field, gave him a mitt, and he was just on top of the world. Smiles ear to ear. There wasn't a ball that came anywhere near him, but he had the time of his life. And so we're in the bottom of the 9th, and they're still down by those 3 runs, and they get 1 run in, and then they load the bases. 2 outs, bases loaded, bottom of the 9th, and we all know who's up to bat, right? The dad's sitting on the bench doing, I'm sure, what Brian was doing just a second ago. Do you let Shay bat? And risk losing the game? Because Shay doesn't even know how to hold a bat, much less connect with a ball. But they handed him the bat. And he walked up to the plate, and the pitcher recognized that the other team had pretty much wiped out their possibilities of winning by allowing Shay to have this one moment. And so the pitcher took a few steps forward and gently lobbed the ball to Shay, who swung awkwardly and missed. And so the pitcher took a few more steps forward. And once again, nice, soft ball pitched into Shay. And somehow, despite the awkwardness and the clumsiness of never having swung a bat before, he managed to connect with the ball, and he hit a soft ground ball right back to the pitcher, which should have been the end of the game. Pitcher should have tossed it to the first baseman, tagged him out, and that was the end. But the pitcher took that ball and he overthrew first base, way far away from any of his teammates. And everybody started running, yelling, both teams, all the parents, run, Shay, run! Shay had never run that far in his whole life. And so, wide-eyed and shocked, he struggled down the baseline, running sort of haphazardly, awkwardly, made it to first base, and they start going, Shay, run to second, run to second! And by this time, the right fielder's got the ball. Littlest kid on the field, like, this is his moment to be a hero. He can throw to second base and get Shay out. The game will be over. But he's caught on, too. So the little right fielder takes that ball and he throws way over the third baseman's head. And everybody everybody's running, yelling, Shay, run to third, run to third, and with the help of the shortstop on the other team who points him in the right direction and yells, Shay, run to third. He comes around third and he starts heading home, and they're yelling, Shay, run home, run home, run home, and he makes it all the way around and he gets to the home plate and he steps on it, and he's the hero of the day, the Grand Slam home run. Shay didn't make it through another winter. But he had that memory. That day where he was part of a team, where he was the hero of the day, and hit that Grand Slam run, and made his dad so proud, and went home to a mom who embraced him with tears running down her cheeks. Why can't the world be more like that? Where compassion counts more than winning. Where we don't look at people as aberrations or weak or wrong or bad, but just as people with emotions and love and needs like everyone else. That's what being peace is all about, and standing for peace is all about.